In 2003, a water utility company in Arizona conducted a study they never publicized. They installed buried clay pots in residential test gardens and measured water consumption over 2 growing seasons. The results threatened their entire business model. Households using the buried pot method reduced outdoor water usage by 73%. Plants grew faster, lawns stayed greener, gardens produced more vegetables, and water bills dropped by an average of $60 per month. The utility buried the study. No press release, no public education campaign, no incentive programs, because water companies do not profit when you use less water. The irrigation industry does not profit when you stop buying sprinkler systems. The global water infrastructure market generates $400 billion annually by keeping you dependent on complex systems that waste most of what they deliver. Meanwhile, a technology that costs $15 and takes 1 afternoon to install has been solving water scarcity for 3,000 years. The Persians used it to grow gardens in deserts. The Romans used it to feed armies in North Africa. Chinese farmers used it to survive droughts that killed millions. Then we forgot it existed. This is the trick they buried, and today you are going to learn exactly how it works. Welcome to Recession Roots. Before we dig into this vault, if these roots matter to you, the best way to preserve this knowledge is simple. Subscribe, hit the bell, and share these roots with those who need to remember what we forgot. The story begins around 1000 BC in the region that is now Iran. The Persian Empire faced a challenge that would have destroyed lesser civilizations. They controlled vast territories stretching from Egypt to India. Much of this land received less than 4 inches of rainfall annually. By any modern standard, large-scale agriculture should have been impossible. But the Persians built gardens that became legendary. The word paradise itself comes from the Persian pairideza, meaning walled garden. Greek visitors wrote in amazement about lush orchards blooming in landscapes that looked like moonscapes. The secret was buried beneath the surface. Persian farmers had discovered that unglazed clay vessels buried in soil released water slowly through their porous walls. They called these vessels oles. A single pot could keep a fruit tree alive through months without rain. Rows of buried pots turned barren hillsides into productive farmland. The technology was so effective that it spread along trade routes from Persia to China, from North Africa to Spain. When the Romans conquered North Africa, they found Berber farmers using the same technique. Roman agricultural writers documented it extensively. Columella's 1st century treatise, De Re Rustica, describes buried clay pots as essential for growing vegetables in dry climates. The Romans carried the technology throughout their empire, from Britain to Egypt. In what is now the American Southwest, indigenous peoples independently developed identical systems. Archaeologists have found buried olla irrigation at sites predating European contact by centuries. The Tohono O'odham people of the Sonoran Desert used buried clay pots to grow crops in conditions that averaged 3 inches of rainfall per year. When Spanish missionaries arrived, they documented gardens flourishing in places they assumed could not support life. The physics behind olla irrigation are elegantly simple. Unglazed terracotta is porous, containing microscopic channels throughout its walls. When you bury a water-filled clay pot in soil, the water seeps through these channels at a rate determined by surrounding moisture levels. Dry soil creates suction that pulls water through the clay. Wet soil creates no suction, so water stays inside the pot. This means the pot self-regulates. It releases water only when plants need it. No timer, no moisture sensor, no electricity, no maintenance. Just physics, working the same way it has worked for 3 millennia. Modern research confirms ancient wisdom. In 1997, researchers at the University of Pretoria published a comprehensive study comparing olla irrigation to conventional drip systems. The buried pots used 70% less water while producing equivalent or better crop yields. Root development improved because water remained consistently available in the root zone rather than cycling between flood and drought. Soil structure improved because surface crusting and compaction did not occur. Salt accumulation decreased because water never evaporated from the soil surface. In 2012, researchers in India tested Ola irrigation on vegetable crops in semi-arid conditions. Tomato yields increased by 30% compared to surface irrigation while using less than half the water. The study calculated that a small investment in clay pots paid for itself within one growing season through reduced water costs and increased harvest value. These studies appear in academic journals. They are never translated into consumer education. They are never promoted by water utilities or irrigation companies. They are never taught in gardening courses or extension programs. The knowledge exists. The distribution does not. Here is why this matters to your wallet. The average American household spends $500 to $1,000 annually on outdoor water usage. Lawns and gardens account for 30 to 50% of residential water consumption in summer months. Most of this water never reaches plant roots. Sprinklers lose 50 to 70% to evaporation and runoff. Drip systems perform better, but still lose 20 to 40%. Surface watering creates wet-dry cycles that stress plants and degrade soil. Buried Ola irrigation loses less than 10%. 90% of every gallon you add reaches plant roots. Do the math. If you currently spend $60 monthly on outdoor water during growing season, switching to Ola irrigation could reduce that to $18. Over a 5-month growing season, that saves $210 annually. Your $15 investment pays for itself in the first month, but the savings extend beyond your water bill. Plants watered consistently through Olas require less fertilizer because stable soil moisture supports healthy microbial activity. They suffer less disease because wet, dry stress weakens immune responses. They produce more fruit because energy goes to production rather than survival. Home gardeners report yield increases of 20 to 50% after switching to Ola irrigation. So how do you actually build this system? One afternoon, $15. No plumber, no experience necessary. Let me be specific. You need unglazed terracotta pots, not glazed ceramics, which are waterproof, not plastic unless you modify it. Standard terracotta flower pots from any garden center cost $2 to $4 each in 6 to 8 inch sizes. For a basic garden bed of 4 feet by 8 feet, you need 3 to 4 pots. Total cost, $12 to $16. You have 2 options for construction. The traditional Ola method uses 2 pots of the same size. Seal the drainage hole of each pot with silicone caulk or a flat stone and silicone. Let cure for 24 hours. Stack the pots, rim to rim, and seal the seam with silicone, creating a sealed vessel with only the top opening. This gives you a buried jug that holds water and releases it through the walls. The simpler single pot method uses 1 pot with the drainage hole sealed. Bury it up to the rim. Cover the top with a terracotta saucer or flat stone to prevent evaporation and mosquito breeding. This method is faster and cheaper, though it holds less water than the double pot version. For installation, dig a hole slightly wider than your pot and deep enough that the rim sits at soil level or just above. Place the pot in the hole. Backfill with the soil you removed, packing firmly against the clay walls. Plant vegetables, herbs, or flowers within 12 to 18 inches of the pot rim. This is the effective watering radius for most soil types. Sandy soil has a smaller radius around 10 inches. Clay soil extends further to 24 inches. Fill your buried pot with water. In the first week, you may need to refill daily as the surrounding soil reaches equilibrium moisture. After establishment, you will refill every 3 to 7 days depending on weather, soil type, and plant water needs. A 6-inch pot holds roughly 1 gallon. An 8-inch pot holds 2 gallons. A double pot, Ola, holds 3 to 4 gallons. That is the entire installation. Dig hole, insert pot, fill with water, repeat as needed. For larger gardens, create a grid of buried pots spaced 36 inches apart. A 20 by 20 foot garden needs approximately 16 pots. At $3 each, total cost is $48. Compare this to a drip irrigation system for the same area, which runs $200 to $400 plus installation. The Ola system uses less water, lasts longer, and never breaks down. Maintenance is nearly zero. Top off pots weekly during growing season. In winter, drain pots before freezing temperatures to prevent cracking, or simply leave them empty until spring. Terracotta pots last 10 to 20 years when properly maintained. Some archaeological specimens have remained functional for centuries. Now let me tell you what the irrigation industry does not want you to know. Modern drip irrigation was commercialized in the 1960s. It was marketed as revolutionary water-saving technology. But buried clay pot irrigation, which uses even less water, had existed for 3,000 years. The industry did not improve on ancient technology. They replaced it with something they could sell, patent, and require ongoing purchases for. Drip systems need replacement emitters. They need pressure regulators. They need filters. They need timers. They need winterization. Every component is a product. Every product generates revenue. A buried clay pot generates no revenue after the initial sale. It cannot be patented. It cannot be improved with proprietary technology. It cannot create customer dependency. So it was erased from public knowledge and replaced with complexity. The global irrigation equipment market generates $20 billion annually. The water utility industry adds another $400 billion. Together, they have spent decades making you believe that efficient water use requires expensive technology and professional installation. A Persian farmer 3,000 years ago knew better. A Roman gardener 2,000 years ago knew better. A Tohono O'odham farmer 500 years ago knew better. Now you know too. One afternoon of work, $15 in materials, no plumber, no permits, no ongoing costs. 70% reduction in water bills, healthier plants, better harvests. Complete independence from systems designed to extract money from you forever. This is the trick they buried under $400 billion of infrastructure. This is what water utilities do not mention in their conservation tips. This is what irrigation companies left out of their product evolution. A clay pot in the ground, filled with water. Working exactly as it has worked since Persian emperors built paradise gardens in the desert. They called it primitive. They called it obsolete. They called it unsuitable for modern needs. Then they sold you plastic tubes and electronic timers and monthly water bills that never stop. The $15 solution is still waiting. The 3,000-year-old technology still works. The only question is whether you bury a pot this weekend or keep paying for complexity that wastes what you buy. If this route revealed something for you, subscribe to Recession Roots and hit the bell. Every like and every share preserves what they tried to bury under $400 billion of pipes and pumps. The next route breaks ground soon.